The Nikon Z family. Hey guys, Moose here. Little fireside chat. Want to talk to you about how we've incorporated these cameras into our photography, the problems they solve, and perhaps give you ideas how they might do the same for your visual storytelling. Now, the Z6 and the Z7, they look identical, other than a little name tag in the corner, top, bottom, back, battery compartment, every bit of them, they look exactly the same on the exterior. On the interior, though, hey, that's where the difference is. So that Z7, that's that 45.7 megapixel camera. You know, that file opens up to about 260 megabytes in Photoshop. The Z6, it's the 24.5 megapixel camera. Its file opens up to about 139 megabytes in Photoshop. Now, the Z7, it's shooting at 9 frames per second. The Z6, 12 frames per second. So in my mind, this is how I work with these cameras. So I'm not shooting with the D850, or I need the D850. The perfect complement in my mind is the Z7. Likewise, when I'm not shooting that D5, the perfect complement with it is the Z6. They both have the same basic traits between megapixels or frames per second. Both are great little tools. But for example, that Z6, a Z6 with the FTN and the new 500-5.6 PF lens attached weighs about the same as that Nikon D5 body by itself. So right there, that's just an amazing thing it can do, is save weight. That's kind of one of the promises of mirrorless camera. Now, this is an all magnesium alloy body, so they can take the punishment just like your D5 or D850. They're sitting here in front of the heat, no problem. I've had them down to -2. I've had them in snow and rain and sleet. They work just fine. One thing that's really cool about both of them is that the VR stabilization is built in. It's on a 5-axis system, and it works really well. So well, I've actually put it in the hands of some people who have, let's just say, not the best hand holding. And even at a slow shutter speed of a 1/10 of a second, with the VR built in the camera, they're getting a very sharp image. That's really amazing technology. Now, when it comes to the autofocus, first, there's three things really has to go on here. First, you got to deal with the EVF. And when I mean deal with it, there's something new we have to learn. It's a new skill base we have to come up with. It's not a shortcoming of the camera. It's a shortcoming of us photographers, especially old farts like me who've been using OVFs for so long. 2, there's settings in the camera. And 3, plain old technical skill. So first, the EVF, okay? The electronic viewfinder. It takes a while to get used to it, okay? There are things about it that, well, just aren't going to be the same as an optical or OVF optical viewfinder. I will be the first to admit it took me a while to get used to it. So that's why I shoot a high-speed extended that makes the EVF work the fastest when you're shooting. Next, there are settings such as using high-speed extended or taking advantage of you shooting something in the air like birds or aircraft using the auto area AF. And that has a whole new feature to it that I have to do a whole video on just on itself. It's really quite a cool thing to do, but you have to learn a new skill base. And then there's simply hand holding and panning. You've got a lighter rig. You will have to adjust the way you work hand holding and panning. But once those are all accomplished, this camera rock on when it comes to working with anything action or not, nailing the focus. It just works incredibly well. Now, it's important to understand that these don't replace cameras in our system, they complement them. And because they are physically smaller, they actually work in places the other ones don't. That's especially true when it comes to shooting video. The video on these cameras is doing a marvelous job for us between the pull focus feature, which is new, the actual quality, and then most of all, the N-Log capability. Taking that raw video feed out of the camera through the HDMI to like the Ninja 5 and using Nikon's the N-Log, the dynamic range and exposure and color is phenomenal. Now it's shooting 4K and it's doing it at 30p. It's just doing a smash-up job. Absolutely love that part of it. Now, when it comes to solving problems, let me tell you one that I think it does incredibly well that my D5 or D850 can't do. Now the FN1 button I have programmed for playback or preview. So in other words, when I take a picture, I hit the FN1 button, I can see the picture I just took. So with the WR10 plugged into the side of the camera, shooting with the SB5000, be 1 or I've worked up to 6 so far, I take a picture, I hit the FN1 button, and instantly I can see the picture that I took. Now without removing my eye from the viewfinder, I can hit the I button on the back of the camera. My settings come up, I can sit there and change either the flash, the ambient light, or both without removing my eye from that camera and shoot. And I can see the results. And to me, that's absolutely brilliant. It has made a huge difference in the speed and success I'm doing working with flash on the fly with subjects, because my work, as you know, in documentary work, I don't interfere or get involved with what's going on. I just want to record it. So, I mean, that's just a huge, huge, huge benefit. Now, that FTN adapter you could place on this allows you to use any lens you want from the Nikon system, basically anything from the last decade or so. Now, right now, the 35-1.8 and the 24-50 f4, those are the 24-70 f4 are the two lenses that fit on that big Z mount natively, but you can use any of those lenses. So every lens in my bag works on these beautifully. So I've used everything from the 8-15 all the way up to 800 without any issues. And I love that fact. Now, is there any drawbacks to any of all this? Well, again, it's not a drawback of the camera. It's basically teaching an old dog new tricks. So I'm having to get used to shooting with that EVF, having to get used to seeing the image not through an optical viewfinder, but electronically brought to me. Because there's information that's there that wasn't there before, and I have to process that in the simple craft of making a photograph. Now, is the single card slot an issue? For me, it's not. I started out with the D1. It had one card slot. In fact, when you swapped out the card, you had to swap out the battery in those days. So the one card slot is not an issue. I don't have cards failing me. At the same time, the battery. Now, when it comes to shooting stills, either Z6 or Z7, they've gone through the whole day of my shooting. I've not had to sit there and replace the batteries. Now, shooting with video, yeah, you go through batteries. You do with any camera. But we're finding the Z7 and the Z6 do not go through as batteries shooting video as quickly as the D850. So for us, it's working just gorgeously. But here's the thing. These are tools being incorporated into our photography. They're not replacing, they're being added to, using their problem-solving abilities applied at the right time to tell a story. And that's what photography is all about. So I want to encourage you to go out and at the very least rent the Z6 or rent the Z7. Give it a good 5 to 10 days. Try it out in all such scenarios and see if it works for your photography. Because whether it's a mirrorless camera, a DSLR, a lens, or software, it all comes down to how you, the photographer, the most important link in this process, works with the tools to tell the story. Because that's what photography is all about. We're visual storytellers bringing our world to those not as fortunate to see it and grabbing their heartstrings.